Welcome back to BaldHeaded Metal, and welcome to another episode of Bonded by Metal with Andrew McKay Smith from Scars and Guitars podcast, and yours truly. And today, it's now the beginning of April. It's time to talk about all the albums we enjoyed in March. And I'm gonna be the gentleman today, and I'm gonna step in and take the first one, if you don't mind, Andrew. What I'm gonna go for is a surprise, because I typically do not like doom metal, especially when it's very heavy and gloomy. It tends to be very monotonous, in my opinion. If it's melodic like Dawn of Solace, I usually enjoy it. But I checked out Convent's new album, Call Down the Sun, and holy shit, it's a great fucking doom record. But it has grooviness to it. It has variety and music to it. At first, I heard one of their first singles, and I just kind of wasn't jiving with it. And the vocalist at first kind of, I got distracted by it. I really didn't see what she was doing. But as I heard the songs Sand is King and Pipe Dreams, I was sold on the album. And just those two particular songs really gave me a different perspective on the band. And if you're not familiar with them, Andrew, it's four women coming out of Denmark. They're fucking badasses. I got to chat with Ricky, their vocalist, actually tell her and express her, like, at first I wasn't with your vocals, but as the album went on and as the music kind of came together, I understood where she was coming from and connected completely with what she was doing. And I was the first album of the month that really was like, wow, this is going to be a good month.
Yeah, I think, look, I mentioned off camera that I didn't find much all that inspirational, to be honest with you. And I think it's because there were so many bangers released in February, and there are some classic albums that are coming up, such as the new Watain album is due to be released in April. And of course, one of the big ones for the year, Meshuggah. So it was only released a couple of days ago. So we're talking right now. For me, it's the 7th of April. For you, it's the 6th of April. But such is the nature of our trans-Pacific, almost trans-Pacific conversations that we have here. But look, what I'll do, I thought I'd just do a bit of a summary of some of the highlights that I've observed throughout March, and then talk about one of them in particular. But Crowbar have a new release out. Sabaton, The War to End All Wars, has been released. That's a classic album. Sabaton don't know how to disappoint, I'll say that. Warrior Soul, a band from way back in the day, prior to the grunge revolution. They were the bright light, the bright hope on the horizon. Now, I haven't checked it out, but Out on Bail has been released from Warrior Soul. There's the big one too, another big one, Ghost Impera. I've had a bit of a listen to it, and it just sounds like Ghost. So if you like Ghost, you're going to like the album. If you don't like Ghost, don't bother. Apparently, Kiss have a live album off the soundboard. Yeah, live in Virginia Beach. I have not checked that one out at all. Dark Funeral, We Are the Apocalypse. I've had a bit of a listen to that one there. Again, if you like what Lord Araman does, you're going to like what this album's all about. If you're not really a fan of what Dark Funeral has long been about, don't bother, basically. Tyr, Tyr, the Viking. Yeah. A Night at the Nordic House, that's a live album. That was released. Billy Bio from Biohazard, Leaders and Liars is another one. Hardcore Superstar, band that features Dredgen, who was in Backyard Babies and Helicopters and the like. He might still be back in Helicopters, actually. That was released as well. Animals and Leaders. Gosh, I can't believe I've yet to check that one out. But Parhegia with Tosin Abasi, the guitar maestro. There's a few there, but I want to single out one just quickly to talk about. And I've talked about this one quite a bit on the Scars and Guitars new music show, Vane FM. Okay, Vane.fm. They're a Nuclear Blast outfit. The album is titled This World Is Going to Ruin You. If you like deathcore, extreme deathcore, you're going to like what these guys here do. It's got some new metal stuff going on with it, but I do like innovation, and I do believe that these guys are trying to take metal in even if by millimeters, they're pushing the boundaries just a little bit. So that album there would be my surprise pick of the albums that have been released in March. In March, yeah. As I say, I didn't find March to be an overwhelmingly, it wasn't like one of those months where it was like there was banger after banger, as far as my music tastes are concerned. But I did find that I was enjoying that one, and it was a surprise because they weren't a band I'd heard of before.
I'm going to have to disagree with you on March, honestly, because I told you right before we started, I had a hard time compiling the list, actually. And again, that's when tastes come into play, right? The differences that we love. You know what I was going to talk about here? I think if anything I was going to talk about, it was going to be Abbott. And you know what?
I checked out that.
Yeah. I checked out Dread Reaver. I will be honest. Initially, I was disappointed when I first heard the album. They released it on stream a little early. And I kind of came away like, fuck, man, I don't think I like this. And as I gave it more and more listens, and this happens a lot actually with Abbott's solo albums, is as I gave him multiple listens, like, oh, no. I didn't expect this, but this is great. And what happens a lot with also Abbott, especially in this album, he's leaning in very heavy into their project with Demonaz that they had, and All Shall Fall albums, in my opinion, when they go into their rock roots of the band mixing in with black metal. So there's a lot of classic rock elements on this album. And of course, we talk about the idea, can Abbott write music on his own? After listening to the album 6 or 7 times at this point, I think it's safe to say he can write music. For the 3 albums that he's released, whether you like it or not, that's a whole different story. But he's able to write music. It's not immediately catchy. And actually, I'm going to mention this album again. If you don't mind, I'm going to skip to my third one because they both relate to each other. And then I'll hand over the reins to you, is because Dark Funeral, We Are the Apocalypse, is the album I was not looking forward to. And I thought Dark Funeral's last 3 or 4 records were kind of garbage. And then We Are the Apocalypse, I check out Let the Devil In single, sucked. I'm like, I guess it's not going to be for me. And then, I told myself, you know what? Let's check out the album. Holy shit, it's good, man. If you listen to it, it's classic black metal. And the reason I said I want to do one after the other, it's better than the Abbott's album. I did not expect to say that in March, but Dark Funeral created a killer record. It's not anything that you've never heard before, but it just has some good songwriting. And they're the OGs of black metal. They're one of the OGs that we know. So I would say back-to-back 2 black metal albums for me.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Dark Funeral are a band that I want to see do well for some reason. To your point, I think it's because they are one of the OGs of the genre.
Yeah,
and they were around back when there was, these bands had nothing to lose whatsoever when they were emerging. And I certainly remember picking up their CDs back in the day and sort of picking between them, Dimmu Borgir, and some of the stuff I had yet to hear. This is sort of 1996, this sort of era, and they always looked incredibly evil on those album photos, didn't they? So, and speaking to Lord Araman, I can tell you, I mean, he's got one of the thickest Norwegian accents that I've ever heard. And it's broken English. It's unusual because you speak to a lot of the Scandinavians and they speak so eloquently, and that's not a dig at Lord Araman at all. He reminds me of the bloke. If you're going to put in your fantasy hat, he's living in some sort of crystallized ice castle somewhere in the far north of Norway. But I need to mention too that probably if I was going to pick a release above all others from March, it would belong to Amorphous with Halo, especially after my conversation there with the guitarist in the group as well, giving some context about the album there. It seems we've talked a little bit about this album on the show. But I will say that I do feel like as though it's a record that is a mixture of all of their different styles and techniques that they've put on albums over the past 25 odd years. So since 2NL from 1999. And I think they do a very, very good job here with Halo. It's an extremely listenable album. You can have it on in the background. It's not intrusive, but if you want to put on some headphones and dive into it and listen to the subtle intricacies of it, go ahead. So that'd be the album for March. Another one too that I enjoyed, black metal one that I'd really encourage you to check out, mate. If you're on a bit of a black metal trip at the moment, is the new one from Mystic Circle, the German band.
I missed that. Yeah.
Look, I spoke to Beelzebub about it all, and it turns out he's a bit of a punk rocker, which I didn't expect. So most of his career is spent in punk rock. But well produced, well put together. They're on Atomic Fire, which is Marcus Steiger's label. The Nuclear Blast were bought by Believe. Marcus went, I want to keep on doing this, but I want to do this my way. I had a long conversation with Mental Blank, the drummer from Sugar. I just spoke to him. Thomas was it? Yeah, Thomas. God, what am I talking
Thomas
about?
Hake.
Thomas Hake, yeah. Too early in the morning, mate. I'll put it down there. But yeah, he gave me a lot of context about why it was important to keep on working with with Marcus and go across to Atomic Fire. But yeah, there's 2 albums there that I'd probably single out, mainly because I did the interviews, but I had to spend time with the albums, and Amorphous I'm still listening to.
You know, Amorphous I didn't put on this list. It's not because it's a bad album or a bad band. That band's fantastic. And talking to Tommy during the interview, I only got to appreciate them even more. For me, it's just never struck the same chord as it did for a lot of people. But I have utmost respect for Amorphous or Insomnium, because these bands kind of paved the way for this very melodic, very melancholic kind of finish with death metal. But for me, as you know, I'm a heavy guy, and for the most part, this month is just heavy albums. It's probably a band many people have not heard about because they were quite small. They didn't have a huge reputation. Is Warpath, and it's a German thrash metal band with kind of punk influences. And they released their very surprise album that I did not hear about, Disharmonic Revelations. They've been around since the 90s. They had a couple albums, Massive and Against Everyone, that I really enjoyed, but their production's always shit. They reformed in 2017 just because it wasn't the same. It was one of those bands that you never really had your eyes on them. They were kind of in the periphery. And when a new album got announced, or at least released for me, I was like, you know what? Let me check it out. Maybe it's good. And when I listen to it, man, it's fucking heavy. It's brutal. It's kind of everything I love about German thrash, you know? And they really, for me, brought it to have the kind of feel. I enjoy the feeling in music when it's a little bit unrefined and it has this little raw edge to it. And that album kind of brought that feeling. If not the best songwriting, it brought the heart to it.
Yeah, I know what you're saying about March being a fairly heavy month, wasn't it? Yeah. There was an album. I spoke to Jizzy Pearl, who's Quiet Right's current frontman, and he's got a group that he's been fronting now for a long time called Love Hate. Their album, Hell California, that's got some heavy blues-based groove. It's not glam, but it's that more traditional rock and roll with metal influences. And I would have liked to. That's why I quite liked the album from Hardcore Superstar as well. I don't know what it is. The older I get, I quite like the metal influenced rock, and I'm not moving away from heavy shit. Gosh almighty, I love listening to the heavy stuff as much as probably what you do. It's just I tend to find I just want to have a lot of stuff on in the car and just leave it in the background. And extreme metal isn't really good for that in the car. Yeah. I mean, just driving the kids around places and all the rest of it. It's you sort of got to turn it up to hear it properly. Whereas when you when you got kids in the car, they talk to you. They just keep asking you questions. What's that? What's this? You know, why? You know, when did we go to the moon? All these sort of questions sort of come up, and you just can't focus on the music when you've got to answer. You end up becoming a dictionary. You know? But yeah, so Hell California. I'll talk about that from Love Hate. If you like bands like Warrant, Skid Row in particular, I'll use that reference point there. If you like Skid Row, you're going to like what's on Hell California from Love Hate. I get a lot of the people that listen to what we're doing here probably aren't fans of a lot of that sort of music. I was just old enough to be at the tail end of the first wave of that stuff, so 1989, 1990. Maybe that's where my appreciation for it comes from, because I remember when those bands were on MTV and the Australian equivalent to MTV. They were number one selling bands and the like. And there's still a bit of it's not nostalgia. I think it's just part of my musical DNA. So yeah, I did like that one there. It certainly got my attention.
There's something interesting that you said. This kind of hit me in the feels automatically. You do remember, right, when MTV used to have music and they had metal on it? It's like, I remember those days.
It's been a while, hasn't it? I mean, fucking MTV, what garbage. What absolute garbage.
Back in the day, Beavis and ButtheadHead, just metal shows back to back. I used to love it so much. Like VH1, I didn't even know existed. And of course, things changed and metal kind of moved to a more internet-based platform. But for me, again, going with the heavy, man, I'm not stopping. And I'm really surprised you at the very least didn't mention this album, which is more of an EP, is Violence, released their first material from 29 years of a hiatus that they've had with their EP, Let the World Burn. It was just 5 songs. When I first heard their songs, Let the World Burn, that was the first single I heard, wasn't digging it. And you know that feeling you get when you get one of your favorite bands or a band that you enjoy, they come back, like, man, is this going to be good? Am I going to enjoy this? Or is this going to be bad? I don't want this to be bad. But I'm glad to say, man, Phil Demmel came out and fucking killed it with this EP. Upon Their Cross, killer. Flesh from the Bone, killer. Sean Killian, which kind of had an acquired taste of a voice from the 90s. He really came with the best vocals that he ever had. He has this little gruffness to his voice now that I really enjoyed. Bay Area thrash, you know me, I fucking love thrash. Phil Demmel, I actually got to interview him as well. And this guy is cool as a fucking cucumber. All his experience that he had in Machine Head and all these other bands. He played a little bit in Slayer. He played a little bit in Metallica. Yeah. He's been around everywhere, man. He really can write some fucking riffs.
Yeah, Phil Demmel's a fantastic musician. I mean, he's a standard bearer of the genre, really. But I guess here's a controversial point. If I am moving away from a genre, it'd be thrash. And that was one of my foundation genres as a young fella growing up. You know, obviously Megadeth, Metallica, Anthrax, Slayer, Testament. I'm not saying I don't like those bands. I absolutely love Testament and Exodus and the like. But I just don't find, for whatever reason, that it gets... So Let the World Burn, for example, didn't get as nearly as many spins, because I did get a copy of it, as what Hell California from Love Hate got. And that's what I'm saying. It's just naturally I find that I'm going toward... I don't even like to use the word melodic, because I still think it's metal-infused rock. I mean, it's not the sort of music you could put on around the average person and expect them to sort of listen to it for more than 30 seconds before they tell you to turn the bloody thing off. But I Flesh from Bone, I quite liked that tune. I did play it on my radio show, on the Scars and Guitars music show, I should say. But I just didn't... I think I had it on once, and then for whatever reason wasn't compelled to sort of go back to it. And that's why I didn't mention it. But I'm glad you did, because I think that Phil in particular is a worthy musician. Gosh, I hope guys like him continue to be successful and continue to be recognized for their contribution to the genre.
I agree, man. And you know what it is too? It's also for you, not necessarily you moving to different places, taste change. For me, I remember where I could not listen to black metal. I thought it was garbage, or even death metal. I thought it was just noise. And then one day we were sitting down, my brother and I, and we listened to Nile. And specifically, I can tell you even the song it was Sacrifice Unto Sebek. And we're listening, like, this is trash. And my brother's like, he stopped, wait, rewind it a little bit. He said, dude, do you hear the fucking melodies that they're playing underneath? And I'm like, I started listening. Yeah, this is impressive. And then next thing you know, the week after that, I'm into Nile. And it's those subtle changes that kind of happen, right? For me, though,
band too. Yeah, fantastic.
I have one, again, very surprised you didn't mention that, because it is more melodic. And it's a band we both appreciate, but a lot of people don't know that even came out. It's Sakis Toli's solo project came out, Among the Fire of Hell. Really fucking good, man. It was really, really good. It just kind of came under the radar. 8 songs, 35 minutes, feels very compact, cohesive. This guy, for me, first of all, what he's done with Riding Christ, especially from Iola and on, that's kind of the generation of Riding Christ that I like, that melodic, unique way of the way he writes songs. I love it. And this takes even a bigger step into the melodic territory, where it's almost not even death metal anymore, except for his vocals. You can almost call it rock. And it's more of the same. It's what you expect from Riding Christ, but a step more melodic. But it just sounds so good. And I really, really enjoyed. Not to mention, I have a respect for Sakis Tolis. He's such a collaborative guy.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't even know that he had one out there. So, I mean, we get sent, we're on email distribution lists, and we get sent releases, and then there's the, you can go online and you can check out what new releases have been released. It didn't even come up. So there you go. I mean, that's what we obviously can't be across everything. I mean, that's not humanly possible, but it'd be nice if there was some sort of a database like Encyclopedia Metallium, with all of the bands that they do, but they had a big block where they said, these are the releases coming up, these are the releases out, or something like that. So we could maybe contact the PR people associated with a lot of these groups and have conversations or do your reactions or what have you. But I'll talk about Ghost Impera. I've said this a couple of times already. That if you're not already into Ghost, don't bother. Ghosts are a funny band. Okay, I appreciate what they do. I think they're important. I do believe that they're important. They are what a lot of mainstream music fans and aficionados, if that's the way to describe people, the average person, they're probably their only foray into something resembling extreme metal. I know that they don't sound extreme, but they look the part. Okay. And that's enough a lot of the time. I do believe they're a gateway band to far heavier material for a lot of people because they get people used to the idea of the imagery. That's where I think they're important. And because, they are satanic, the satanic themes that they're singing about, they're unvarnished in that respect. But the music it's fucking Elton John and stuff, isn't it? Really, it's Billy Joel, Elton John, it's Journey, it's late 1980s, early 1990s FM radio stuff, John Bon Jovi or what have you, without a lot of the wankery. But I quite like the album. It just seems to be another installment in the Ghost saga, and I couldn't really pick any highlights from it because I haven't listened to it in the depth that would require to be able to do that. But I've had it on and it seems to be fairly well written. So I'd encourage anybody out there who's even slightly interested in what Ghost are doing to check that one out. I don't think you're going to be disappointed.
And you know what it is? It was funny. I saw an article this month also when they asked King Diamond from Merciful Fate, and King Diamond was like, "Oh, do you think Ghost has stole your look and stole your kind of style?" I was like, "I don't think so." It's like, I think they're more, and then he mentioned these 70s and 80s rock bands. Like, I think they're more like that than they are me. It's like they have their own unique look. It's like, I don't think they took my look. A lot of people say they stole my kind of shtick, but I don't think that's the case. And that was really interesting to hear him say personally. And he kind of expressed his own appreciation for the band as well. And look, no matter what, I'll be 2 seconds.
You're right. Go for it, mate.
Yeah, I was gonna say, look, at the end of the day, if there's such a fan base for this band and people are appreciating them, they're already doing their job for rock and both heavy metal. I think they're just kind of getting people to appreciate, first of all, rock music on a much bigger platform. It's one of the best-selling albums, right now. There you go. It already done the job.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's important to have your highlights. So it's I'm trying to find Metallica. Gosh, you talk about them a lot, don't we? And I want to, I always stress that they're just our views about Metallica, but I think they're an extremely important band. Again, they're you talk to the bloke behind the counter at the petrol station or the gas station, as you call it, and he's looks like a regular bloke asking what a metal band is, and he'll say Metallica. Okay, and at least there's some real metal there. Okay.
Yeah.
When you dive into it through the 80s, there's some real no bullshit metal. I mean, nothing released since 1991 is, but whatever. The Dog Fashion Disco were a band that were around in the late 90s, and they had a bit of a pop for a moment when the Limp Bizkit thing and the Korn thing started to take off.
Yeah.
I have not listened to their album, or is it an EP? I think it's an album called Cult Classic, but I'd be very interested to hear anybody out there who's interested in Mr. Bungle, especially, bands like that sort of left of center metal, let's call it that.
Yeah.
They were certainly the pick of the bands that were being really force-fed to people via, I remember Metal Hammer, or when they were magazines and you'd pick it up and they'd be interviewing all these bands with stupid coloured hair and all the rest of it. They were one of the bands with silly coloured hair, but they actually had some substance to them back then. I'd be curious to hear what that album sounds like, Cult Classic. And another band from back then, I'm sort of talking about, want to talk about bands that were fairly prominent in the 90s that have either come back or they've got new releases out. I couldn't tell you if Stabbing Westwood are coming back or whether they've just been around releasing albums and they've just got yet another album out. But either way, Stabbing Westwood were a band that were getting a lot of prominence around when Nine Inch Nails first started getting prominence. Well, not first, but when the Downward Spiral came out. And mate, they were doing it. Stabbing Westward, they were a great band, far more metal based than Nine Inch Nails, which is way too electronic for my tastes.
Yeah.
And Chasing Ghosts is the name of their album. I would love to check that one out. That's what I'm going to do. So again, I'm just making these talking points for people who might be of my vintage and remember these bands when they were out in the 90s, and they were on soundtracks and all sorts of things. And Stabbing Westward, they could write songs, man. They knew how to write some great tunes, and they did some big tours back in the day as well. So I'd be curious if anybody out there has listened to that album. Tell me your thoughts and feelings about it in the comment section.
And that right there, guys, is kind of, I think that's all we had really for the month. You already said for you it's a little bit more of a dry month. There's going to be some interesting things to talk about for next month already. We mentioned Meshuggah. I'm going to leave that one for next one so I can really gather my thoughts more on that band. As you know, I'm one of the newer fans to that band. I'm so jealous you got to talk to Thomas there. But guys, again, let us know what you thought in the comments. What are your top albums for the month, what you've been enjoying and listening to. Obviously, you can comment on any of the bands that we've mentioned here. And perhaps maybe with our picks, we've introduced you to something that you never heard yourself. And I'm going to be there again. I want to be the gentleman. I want to leave the last word to Andrew.
Yeah, there's some absolute killer material coming up to listen to throughout April. Watain, one of my favorite bands of the moment, the Swedish black metal horde. They're with the mothership, Nuclear Blast. Okay, so they finally might get the reach and the audience that I think that they deserve, because they are one of the most tremendous live bands that I've ever seen. And it actually comes across on album too, so I can't wait to listen to that one there. And the other thing is we could almost dedicate an entire episode to just talking about this new album from Meshuggah. Because look, I've lived with it now for about 2 weeks or so. It is a very, very good Meshuggah album. And if anybody's interested to obtain Thomas's thoughts on the album, I do go there with him. We talk for an hour. He gave me an hour of his time, and he doesn't do that. Normally, the 20-minute interview blocks or so, but we just kept talking. So we dived right into it, and you can hear about the intricacies on that album. If you're interested, just go across to my channel and have a look at that chat. But another good chat there, mate, and looking forward to the next one.
Sounds good to me, man. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, bro. No worries.